Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Doug, are there any public speakers?
We have one public speaker today, Murray Bowden.
How do you quickly describe the changes that I see around here? I guess one would say there's a flexibility and the willingness to think outside the box. That's new and appreciated. Things are happening in a different way. Now, I've stood up here for the last years and years and say, why don't we? Well, why don't we's here? Does everybody agree with me? No. Do they speak with me and do we discuss problems? Yes. The start of this discussion anywhere leads to a solution. If there's no conversation, there's no solution. At the Metro-North meeting this morning, somebody asked, why don't we buy quad cars instead of married pair? And the answer was, well, because we have equipment to service pairs and not quads, we'd have to redo everything. But the reality of it is, yes, you could buy quad units consisting of two married pairs. That means you would be able to do all your repairs on the equipment you have now. And if you had to take out a unit, you would only have to take two cars out, because there's ways of disassembling. And those two cars should be open cars with no barrier in between. That should be relatively easy to design a married pair that's open, and so that people could go back and forth. It would also make it possible to put longer trains in the stations you have now by opening the doors selectively. That's flexibility of approaching a problem in a different way. There are a number I had a meeting with Bridge and Tunnels. It was excellent, thinking about things in new ways. I met with innumerable people in innumerable places. It's palpable. Is that the right word? I can feel the energy in change. And I don't know where it started, but there's certainly change happening here. I notice it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. That concludes our public speakers.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we have the approval of the October 26th minutes, and may I have a motion and a second, please? Any comments or corrections? All in favor? Aye. Next is Budget Watch. Doug?
Yeah, also, there's no changes to the work plan. Budget Watch, we don't do a Budget Watch in November. Mr. Foran will be presenting the November financial plan on Wednesday to a meeting of the full board and a joint meeting of the full board and finance committee meeting. That'll be Wednesday morning. Following that, we have Finance Watch.
Okay. Good afternoon. Finance Watch appears on page 18 of your committee materials this month. We have a few transactions to report. The first being Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority fixed rate bonds. This is comprised of two subseries, the $65 million 2015B, which are new money bonds, and a conversion of the 2008 B3 bonds at $91,140,000. Those bonds were issued in 2008 as mandatory tender bonds. So we had a put, and we took advantage of the low rate environment and fixed those bonds out. This transaction just closed this morning before we met here. We were very pleased. As you can see the statistics at the bottom here, the all-in TIC for the transactions combined was 3.87%. The average life was 19.17 years. And I just want to compliment our senior manager on this deal, Loop Capital Markets. They continue to impress and perform very well. And in this case, we saw very, very tight spreads to the high-grade index, which is really the way we consistently measure our performance on these deals, and they improved greatly over our past outing. And of course, they worked together with other co-senior managers. This was an all MWBE and service disabled veteran-owned deal. And the entire syndicate performed very well. I just want to compliment them all on that. Next, we have the TBTA variable rate refunding bonds 2005 B4A. This was a bond that we put out as a floating rate note, and we were very pleased with the result on that, with a 0.30 spread to the 1-month LIBOR, 67% of 1-month LIBOR. And then similar to that, we did the 3-year floating rate note with also on the Triborough credit, $43.8 million, and this one came in at a 0.58 spread to the 1-month LIBOR. So very strong performance here, and this transaction was managed by the joint venture of Morgan Stanley and Siebert Branford Schenck. We just wanted to note that we do have an upcoming issuance of transportation revenue bond anticipation notes, the 2015 Bs. Again, we're anticipating a competitive issuance of the notes, which will be come due next year, and we'll take those out with long-term bonds, and we're anticipating a $700 million issuance. Lastly, we have to report our October 29th competitive bid for fuel, for the fuel hedge program. We executed a 3.293 million gallon ULSD hedge, and in this case, Goldman Sachs J. Aaron won the bidding at an all-in price of $1.71 per gallon. And that program is continuing to roll out well. I'm happy to take any questions at this point. Okay. Yeah. Sean?
Thank you, Pat, as always. I just had a question on the fuel hedging.
Sure.
You said it's rolling out well. Could you give me a better feel for it? I have it, it's somewhere in here. I'm going all electronic today, which I think I'm re-questioning.
Sure.
Can you give a little more depth into why you say it's rolling out well?
Yeah, I think we summed this up pretty thoroughly last month at our meeting, where we did talk about both interest rate and fuel hedging. The fuel hedge summary is on page 104 of the committee materials, and we did make a change to that report, I think, to make it more user-friendly. So if you look at page 105 of your committee materials, you'll see there all of our months that are hedged, and it includes the current month all the way out to September of 2017. And it's not just one hedge per month, but it's multiple hedges per month, giving you that weighted average hedge price for each month. And as you can see in the current month, we're hedging at $2.76 a gallon, all the way out to September of 2017, where we're hedged at $1.71 per gallon. And we look at the amounts that we're hedging, and again, the goal is 50% hedge for the first 12 months, or for the next 12, I should say, and then declining hedge amounts all the way out to the 24th month, where we'd be 4% hedged out at the back end of the curve. So again, the program is performing well, as I commented, because it's giving us budget certainty for a substantial portion of our fuel program. And I'd be happy to spend more time going through the details with you if you.
Yeah, no, last month was helpful.
Yeah.
That was helpful, and I couldn't find the page, so
Sure.
thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Capelli?
Yeah, it doesn't really fit in with the finance watch. I expected that there would be a budget watch portion of the program in anticipation of the budget that we're going to be dealing with. I did want to raise the issue of looking at expansion of services in the future, and I saw the City Council Transportation Committee had raised some issues, which I thought was interesting, particularly the designation of certain areas of the city and/or, I guess, region. I would expand it to that transportation deserts and how to deal with that. That's a discussion, at least publicly, that we haven't been able to have for quite a while, between fiscal crises and then the impending capital budget being unfunded. Really sucked all the oxygen out of the air for the the past few years. But many of us have had conversations on the side about looking at doing the expansion of certain things. And one of the issues that I know that many of us have been talking about is the potential expansion of ridership programs for people who use the commuter rails within the city of New York, and looking to come up with that. I saw in one of the articles a staff member had suggested that it would cost $70 million in order to expand the program. I don't know where that number came to, but what I would ask is that we have an analysis for our consideration over these coming months of that as a potential. I know that the riders group is going to be proposing, I think they call it the Freedom Fare, to the board. I think that ought to be shared with all of us so that we can get a look at what the cost of that would be. I think the City of New York has some ideas as well, and that we have the ability to look at this with some cold, hard numbers so we can plan on perhaps making changes as the months come ahead. So I would ask that the staff be directed to supply us all with that information with a view towards seeing if we can ease the burden of some of our city residents who have to use multimodal transportation within the city.
Bob will be giving a four-year financial plan outlook as he normally does in November. We do one in July, we do one in November, and then we vote on the budget in December as usual. And I think at that time, we'll be able to prospectively show what the funding impacts are and what we have. With respect to fare policy, as has been the case the last couple of fare increases, in the year leading up to that, we look at all the different options that are on the table in terms of changes, potential changes to fare policy, looking at their benefits and costs, and we'll be glad to share those with you because with respect to the city ticket or the freedom ticket, we'll cover it in that particular in that context as well as any service issue we may contemplate. So there'll be a discussion presentation with no vote on Wednesday at the board meeting for the financial plan, so that'll start the dialogue. Any other questions, comments?
Okay, moving to headquarter and all agency items. For headquarters, we have two report and information items. The first being the 2014 to 15 station maintenance receivables update for the period ending September 30th, 2015. I'm pleased to report that the total amount billed of $161.2 million, all of it has been received by the counties. From the counties. Did I say? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any questions on that? The second item is the review and assessment of the Finance Committee charter. There are no changes to the proposed charter. The charter is included on the agenda annually so that members of the Finance Committee can review and assess its adequacy. Okay, moving on. We're going to move to headquarter procurements. There are two procurements for personal services contracts for a total of $20,238,000. So we need a motion.
We have a motion? Second? Any comments and questions? All in favor? Aye.
Okay. For Metro North and Long Island Railroad, there are two non-competitive procurements for Metro North for a grand total of $1,207,000.
Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There's one competitive procurement for the Long Island Railroad for an RFP totaling $6,421,000.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Moving to New York City Transit MTA bus operations, there's one action item for New York City Transit requesting board approval to perform energy audits in New York City Transit departments of subways maintenance facilities utilizing the services of the New York Power Authority, consistent with the MTA NYPA Energy Services Program Agreement that was approved by the board in 2005.
Second? Any comments or questions? Mr. Ballin?
I recuse on that one, please.
Okay.
Similar
So
to
noted.
the committee.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay. For New York City Transit, there is one competitive procurement for a grand total of $184.9 million.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Okay. For bridges and tunnels, we have one contract modification for a total of $781,000.
Any a motion to move? Second? Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
All right, we have no items for FIMTech. And next, we would move to the real estate portion of the meeting.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Doug. Is this on? I'm getting a red light. Yeah, sounds like it is. Thank you, Doug. We have 4 action items this month, each the subject of a separate staff summary in the books. I'd like to call particular attention to the first item, which is conveyance of vacant lot at 234 East 127th Street. That's been made possible by the closing of the 126th Street bus depot, and I think is emblematic of the efforts we've been making to cooperate with the city in planning for development in East Harlem, as it'll be affected by the second phase of the Second Avenue subway. This is, we propose to convey this property to the city to allow them to complete an assemblage of the 2-block mixed-use development that will be furthering their economic development agenda there. We'll get $4.3 million in cash, but most importantly, significantly, I think, is we've agreed with the city that they will be providing us with an easement to allow us to provide for an essential ventilation facility for the 125th Street station at 125th and Park as part of an HPD-sponsored development, without which we literally would not be able to build that station. So I think it's some very good cooperation, and we're happy to move that item. I'd also like to note that we've been able to acquire some property immediately adjacent to the North White Plains Metro North yard that the railroad has frankly been coveting for some while. It's always best to be able to acquire a property like this opportunistically and not through condemnation or other involuntary action, and at a time when we don't have to relocate a tenant. So we're happy with the price and very happy to acquire that 35,000 square foot property. Any questions? Otherwise, I'd ask for approval of the 4 items.
Mr. Ballin? All right. Well, let me motion. Second. Any comments and questions? Go ahead, Mr. Ballin.
Thank you. Just quickly, what is the proposed use for the parcel contiguous to the North White Plains yard? And then I have one more question.
As I understand it, it's a general expansion of their existing operations there. They're just very much constrained for space, have been for some years.
Okay, thank you. And then going back to the first one, I understand, I don't know much about the mixed-use project other than what you submitted, but I note that we're not getting any type of premium for the property, and it's a parcel that we otherwise, might obtain some type of gain in the value over time if we just held it.
Well,
So I'm not fully understanding why we would sell it for approximately the one appraisal, or were there more than one appraisals, first of all? Price.
Well, they've appraised the property. The city has appraised the property, so have we independently. And I will say, without hammering the point, that if you combine the value of the easement that we're acquiring and the cash consideration, I believe we're significantly in excess of fair market
But the
value.
easement is for ventilation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but it's a
For
property
which-
that
for which
we
project?
for Second Avenue subway. We would
Right,
otherwise
so
have
if
to
we
acquire
can
that
use
property.
this, I know, but if human beings need to breathe in the Second Avenue subway, you'd think that would be something that would be easily negotiated. My only question is the value of
We're-
property that we don't need to sell, that we're accommodating others, and why don't we get a premium for that type of
Well, I
sale?
believe we are getting a premium, and The property is encumbered by an urban renewal plan and subject to zoning and so on. We think we're getting the money that we would get from the property.
Mr. Albert?
Jeff, 234 East 127th Street is between 2nd and 3rd Avenue.
Yes.
I thought the 2nd Avenue subway was veering westward to meet 125th and Park Avenue.
There's
In which case, why would there be a ventilating shaft at 127th Street?
No, 100, no, I think I may have misspoken. The property where we're getting the easement is at 125th and Park, which is the terminus of the,
Yes,
of the property, adjoining the Metro North tracks.
yes. So it will be veering westward, obviously, to
Yes,
meet
and
them.
I'll add that there's quite a lot of development pressure in that immediate environment, and this is our one-time opportunity to acquire that property.
Got it. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm
believe
going to
that
abstain
concludes-
on the one sale that.
You abstain on which sale, I'm sorry?
On the one sale to New York City, because
Okay.
I didn't follow the answer that it was above a premium, but it was at the appraised, so rather than hold everyone up, I'm the only person, so I'll abstain.
You'll
on
abstain?
that.
Okay.
Please.
And if you want to meet with Jeff, he can go over the numbers with you. I believe that concludes the agenda for today. Next meeting will be Monday, December 14th. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Aye. We will begin CPAC 1/2 hour early at 12:45.